At Sierra, discover joyous deals on great gifts for everyone on your list. Like cozy slippers, ski gear, fishing poles, bikes, large kayaks, even larger canoes. Whew, which might lead to another discovery. Wrapping gifts is the only sport you need to stay fit this season. 'Tis the season to discover great gifts at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
This episode is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like needing the protection of an offensive guard on the football field, but getting an elementary school crossing guard. Sure, they're both guards, but you can only trust one to keep your quarterback safe when the game is on the line. So don't settle for just any insurance when there's State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
'Tis the season for all your holiday favorites, like A Very Jonas Christmas Movie and Home Alone on Disney+.
Did I burn down the joint? I don't think so.
Then Hulu has National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
We're all in for a very big Christmas treat.
All of these and more streaming this holiday season. And right now, save big with our special Black Friday offer. Bundle Disney Plus and Hulu for just $4.99 a month for 1 year. Savings compared to current regular monthly price. Ends 12/1. Offer for ad-supported Disney Plus Hulu bundle only. Then $12.99 a month or then current regular monthly price. 18 plus terms apply.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast with Rich Ferraro.
Hello and welcome to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast, and our match report following the Reds' home defeat to Brighton and Hove Albion by 2-0. There was a goal at the end of each half for the visitors, and Forest toiled away, but they couldn't get back in the game after losing the advantage. I'm joined by Tom Newton, and Tom, before we do anything else, I think it's really important that we acknowledge a very, very sad event that's happened this week, that we acknowledge that Forest held a minute's silence and both teams were wearing black armbands after the sad death of 14-year-old Josh Travis, who was a member of the Forest Academy. Really, really awful news, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is really awful news. And the 1 minute silence was immaculately observed by both sets of supporters. So, yeah, really sad time for the family just before Christmas. I know no time's obviously a great time, but right before Christmas, it's horrible. And my thoughts with his friends and family.
Yeah. To state the obvious, obviously all of us at 1865 are sending our thoughts to Josh's nearest and dearest. Back to the match. Obviously, I think it sounds glib, but one of the things that you always want to do in these situations is try and put in a performance and get a result to make people proud. When you saw the Forest lineup, which was Sells in goal, Savona and Williams at fullback, Milenkovic partnered by Morato, because Murillo hadn't recovered from the muscle injury he picked up on Thursday night. And then in midfield, the double pivot of Sangare and Anderson, Ndoye on the right, Dominguez on the left, Gibbs-White behind Jesus. So, Tom, I don't think I was surprised by that team news. Was it what you were expecting? Was it what you were hoping for?
Well, if you take the Malmo game out of it, because obviously it wasn't really a contest, was it? So if you go from the Liverpool game, I get why Sean Dyche has kept the same team because he doesn't like tinkering. But against Liverpool, obviously you're going to be up against it. I know it was a 3-0 win in the end, and the last two occasions we've won up at Anfield, Nicolas Dominguez has played on the wing, and obviously he's just given his legs in midfield. However, as you know, I've gone on record on this pod to say I'm a massive fan of Nico Dominguez if he's played in the middle. At the moment, because of the form of Elliot Anderson and Ibrahim Sangare, they're above the pecking order. So, in my view, I would have liked to see Amari Hutchinson, because in the last two games he's played when he can play, i.e. against Liverpool and Leeds, he's been absolutely brilliant. And I thought he was a bit unfortunate that he didn't get a start today. And I think the Dominguez experiment at home, it doesn't really work on the wing. I think, away from home, obviously, it does work. But I think Hutchinson, I think he will start in the next game against Wolves. But I think as the home team, you need to be. I thought it was a bit an imbalanced look, to be honest, and I think that was quite telling, especially in the first half.
Well, never mind the first half. The first minute and a half, Forest, conceded two really kind of alarming chances, which were really un-Forest-like because of how completely passive the entire team was in letting the visitors cut through us. First one with Yankuba Minte. Thankfully, he overran the ball slightly. And then there was a chance down the left-hand side, which I think was Cuyper putting the ball across. And within the first minute and 20 seconds, two efforts to really get the alarm bells ringing. Yeah,
you think first 5-10 minutes, like the last few games, Forest have been at it from the start. But you think, after first those two occasions, you think Forest will sort themselves out. But it took them 20 minutes to actually get a foothold in the game. And I think we was incredibly lucky that we kept Brighton out at that point. And then after the first 20 minutes, we started getting a bit of a foothold in the game, making some inroads. But like you said, there's some alarm bells in that first few minutes kind of thing, and they could have easily been 1 or 2 up.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously you were at the game, I wasn't. So what I can tell you is that on Sky, after I think it's about 12, 14 minutes, they put up a graphic saying Forest had 1 effort and Brighton had 7. And at half time, let's just jump ahead to that, which was apparently this is the Premier League match of the season, which had the most chances at either end. So, I think it shows, doesn't it, that both teams kind of, I think they were a little bit front heavy in terms of how they played, but it meant that Brighton were able to, for those first 22, 24 minutes, I would say, it meant they were really able to cut through us. And the things that were alarming me, and I'd be interested in your thoughts, number one, Nico Williams, who's an 8 out of 10 most matches this season, for the first time he was, well, let's just say Yankuba Minte had both him and Morato on toast, didn't they?
Yeah, I agree. That was the ball what they were using quite a lot with Cuba Minter. There's a couple of times where they tried to get around Nico Williams' side, and then they played a ball a few times over the top where Minter's got in between Morato and Williams. And I said to the people around me, I says they need to stop that at source because they're going to hurt us. Because Minter, we know how he is in terms of pace, tenacity, etc. And I thought, Forest need to obviously cut that out at source, or like I said, they were going to score kind of thing. And thankfully, after that, 20, 24 minutes, Forest got the house in order and not that source. And like I said a second ago, Forest started to make some real inroads in the final third. But sometimes it's that final ball, which is going to be the common theme in this pod, is that it was probably an inch to kind of thing. That was our Achilles heel throughout the game today. We'll definitely be coming back to that, as you say. So just to move on, so point number 2, which is that Savona wasn't on toast in the same way as is his opposite number at fullback. But Brighton played an absolute tactical blinder because they had 2 left-backs who, it was basically on paper, Maxime de Cuyper was playing at left-back and Ferdi Kadiolu was playing left mid. But in practice, they were both interchanging and working really, really well together. And it created a lot of problems. And this is where I'm also going to point out that on either flank as well, you've already mentioned Nico Dominguez. Nico Dominguez wasn't able to help out Nico Williams, and Dan Ndoye wasn't really able to help out Nicolas Savona too much. Yeah, and another thing what I noticed is that there was a couple of times Welbeck was doing this really well, where he was dropping in deep, and there was no one within 10, 15 yards, and he was becoming a thorn because obviously he was linking up the play from the midfield to their attack, etc. Then obviously you've hit the nail on the head with obviously Dominguez and Dan Ndoye. So, but after that first 20 minutes, Forest weathered it and was on another day. Was just unlucky with the the Morgan Gibbs-White chance on another day. If that's on target, it's in, isn't it? So well, I'll come back to my third point in just a second. Let's just talk through that chance by Gibbs-White, because for all that a lot of fans were saying, oh, it's a bit of a mistake to play Dominguez on the left wing, he did have a really good contribution in this instance where basically he took an opportunistic attempt to run past his man right down the touchline, proper kind of chalk on your boot stuff.
and he got around Mats Fifa. He went down almost to the byline, and then he looked up and he realised he was going to have to play it with his left foot, saw Gibbs White towards the edge of the box, and played a really nice cross in. And Gibbs White was kind of doing a sort of a half volley kind of while pirouetting in midair. And I have to say, from where I was sat on my sofa, it looked to me all the world like it was going in, but it just faded away from goal at the last minute. Did you think that one was in?
Yeah, I was setting up for Bushford, so as soon as it left his boot, you have like an indication that it's going to be in, or if not, very, very close. And as it whistled past the post, I thought, so unlucky that is. And obviously, I think it was one of those games. After that first 20 minutes, if we did get ourselves in front, it would have been a completely different game today. But obviously, it wasn't to be.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I would agree with you on that. The third point I was going to make with regards to the first half, and that particularly those first sort of 20, 25 minutes, is that I was thinking two things. Number one is that Morato, you can tell that he's not got the same pace as his Brazilian counterpart because we were lacking pace in defence. And number two is that he wasn't helped by the fact that, as you mentioned, like people like Welbeck and Jorginho Ruta, they were able to find space in the gap between our defence and midfield. And I was thinking, well, Jair Cunha's got more pace. Would that have been a better choice? I was also thinking, nothing against Sangare or Anderson, but actually that's the kind of time when you wanted a Yates to be there, just kind of being clever in terms of how he positioned himself, harrying the players who are dropping into the number 10 position and so on and so forth. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think with, you mentioned about Murillo, he does go and press, but then if he doesn't get the ball, he's got, like you say, you got that pace to recover and everything. But yeah, I just think nobody was really sticking on Welbeck, and I think it's more Yates's game. I'm not saying he's any better than Ali Anderson or Sangare, because obviously them two have been playing quite well. But I think if you give Yates a job like that, he is a bit more disciplined than obviously Anderson and Sangare, because they want to get on the ball a bit more.
Or actually, as you mentioned earlier, even Nico Dominguez, if he'd been playing centre mid, he could have done that. And, actually, it makes you think about the tactical approach. But I also don't want to be too harsh, because although it took Forest 22 minutes to wake up, when they did wake up, they basically firstly matched Brighton, and then they started to create chances. The Gibbs White chance was a bit of a one-off, but then they started to press Brighton. And again, this is where Forest showed that actually, like their South Coast counterparts, they were able to make some inroads by having kind of quite of a front-heavy team. So the front four of Ndoye, Dominguez, Gibbs White and Jesus were able to trouble Brighton's defence a lot more, weren't they?
Yeah, pretty much. And there was another occasion where Gibbs White, and he got put through by Sangare, and all he needed to do is shoot across goal. I'm not saying he was going to score, but he tried to put it on back post, and it was like a pass to nowhere. And you're just thinking, just believe in yourself a bit more. If you hit that across goal, you never know if the keeper could palm it out, etc. But like you say, when Forest did match Brighton and start obviously playing on the front foot a bit more with our forward line, we start getting huge success. But
yeah, I mean they did, and I think, with that Gibbs White ball, I think it was one of those where he was caught between two stools, wasn't he? Because I think initially he was thinking about shooting, then he realised that Jesus was in good position, tried to put it into a little corridor of uncertainty on the edge of the 6-yard box, but played it about 2 yards too far forward for the Brazilian. And you could tell on Morgan's face, you could tell that he knew that he'd made the mistake there. There was also the chance where Morgan had an effort from a corner, and it hit, I can't remember if that was first half or second half, but it hit Sangare. And again, you could see on Morgan's face, it's like that actually you could compare and contrast his facial expressions, because the first one, he knew he'd made the mistake. The second one, he was going, I couldn't have done it any better. And it didn't go in through no fault of my own.
Yeah, the one where it got blocked by Sangare, that was at the Trent end, so obviously the second half. So, but even at 0-0, it was. You had a funny feeling it's going to be one of those games where it wasn't going to quite happen to Forest, because obviously the amount of chances and half chances that they didn't obviously put in the back of the net.
Yeah, I just had a feeling that it wasn't going to be 0-0 at half time, even as the half went on. And I did have a feeling it's probably going to be the visitors who made the breakthrough, even though Forest had been in the ascendant. And sure enough, it came through. And it was actually a symptom of all the things that we've talked about already, wasn't it? Because they exploited space in the middle of the park. Morato was pulled over to one side. Milenkovic was pulled across by Welbeck, and Savona was caught between two stools with the two left-sided players, which meant that Cuyper basically came through in a number 10 position. And credit to him, absolutely composed finish for someone who's nominally a defender.
Yeah, looking at the highlights before we started recording this pod, I did look at that goal again, and you're just thinking, happened that quickly, they've moved us all over the place, and obviously Savona can't come around on the cover to obviously prevent the goal. So, but the guy in front of the old chap in front of us says it's nothing that more than what Brighton deserved. They even we had that obviously that bit of purple patch after 20 minutes. You'd still think like Brighton on chances and how they played was probably the better side. So going into half time, it probably they did deserve that 1-0 lead. You see.
The 1865 Match Report.
There's a reason Chevy trucks are known for their dependability, because they show up no matter the weather, push forward no matter the terrain, and deliver. That's why Chevrolet has earned more dependability awards for trucks than any other brand in 2025, according to J.D. Power. Because in every Chevy truck, like every Chevy driver, dependability comes standard. Visit Chevy.com to learn more. Chevrolet received the highest total number of awards among all the trucks in the J.D. Power 2025 U.S. Vehicle Dependability Study. Awards based on 2022 models. Newer models may be shown. Visit JDPower.com/awards for more details. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
For the second half, Forest did make substitutions. I think they realised that things couldn't go on the way they were, and it was the two wide players who we had discussed earlier who were sacrificed, and a pair of you might say old-fashioned wingers came on in their place, with Amari Hutchinson replacing Ndoye on the right, Callum Hudson-Odoi replacing Nico Dominguez on the left. Were those the subs that you were expecting?
Yeah, and something needed to change, especially down the flanks kind of thing. And I mean, no disrespect to Hudson-Odoi, I know he scored against Palace on second game of the season, but he hasn't really got going this season, has he? He's been a bit wishy-washy in terms of how he's playing. But
I'm going to throw it out here right now. And I take no pleasure in saying this, but the way he played today reminded me of the talented but annoying kid in the playground who just always wanted to just do one or two things too much by himself. And then when he did try and play it to a teammate, it's not because it was a team thing, it's because he'd run down a blind alley.
Yeah, and he got into a really good position in the second half, and his signature move, if you say, is like pulling it into like the far corner, and he just smashed it straight into Trent, and you're just thinking,
yeah. There's also a moment where he was played in down the channel, and I just found myself thinking, do you remember his goal against Man City last season when he's on the right hand side, and you thought, well, he's not going to shoot from there, but he found a way to clip it in at the near post, and if he had a left foot, then he would have clipped it in at the near post, above Verbruggen's outstretched hand. That's what I would have done. Of course, I'm not a footballer, but that's what I would have hoped to see a player do in that instance. But instead, because he's not got the confidence of shooting with his left foot, he tried to play it across, blocked at source.
Yeah, and as we said a second ago, you just know it's going to be one of those days for Forest where they tried everything and nothing come on.
Yeah.
But he had Amari Hutchinson, and as soon as he's got the ball, he just wanted to attack the fullback. And is it Kadioglu?
Kadioglu, yeah.
And he did him time and time again. And you're just thinking, that's going to be the way we're going to get back into this game. But as you mentioned, and for all the great work that Amari did down that right flank, as you said, right at the top of this podcast, the trouble we had was that each of those deliveries, firstly, Brighton, Lewis Dunk's a bit of an enigma of a player to me, because to me, he's one of those who he's really good, solid, everything you want from a good, solid, tall, meaty, experienced centre-half for 90% of his games. And the other 10% of his games, he just has absolute brain farts, doesn't he? And does something stupid. Like he'll end up scoring a ridiculous own goal like he did last season, or getting sent off like he did a couple of seasons ago.
But today he was at his best, and him and the defence, they were able to cut most things out at source, or where we did get in behind them, like you say, those deliveries that were maybe a foot in the wrong direction, or cutting it back and then finding that Jesus had gone in at the near post. And again, to be honest, I'm going to put this on Hudson-Odoi. This is where Hudson-Odoi, as the winger, needs to be covering the space just behind rather than legging it in at the foot. So, yeah. And one last thing on Hudson-Odoi as well. And other opinions, I'm sure, are available. So please don't think I'm just just laying into this particular player. But he's got a languid running style, hasn't he? He's got languid body language, and there are a few times too many when I just thought, I just want you to look like you're sprinting at that moment.
Yeah. And another thing regarding the chances, what you've just mentioned, the amount of chances, if somebody just hung on back post, there could have been like no end of chances. But there was a tweet earlier, I can't remember who it was from, but it's quite interesting. Even though I thought he did okay today, Jesus, if you had Chris Wood on there, would have he finished one of the chances what we did have? Obviously, it's all ifs, buts and maybes, but
no, yeah. I think it's a very good point, and actually, it's the one that Mrs. Ferraro was making while we were watching, which is that I think that extra experience and know-how of Chris Wood, and actually, when you watch back the goals that he scored in his hat-trick for the 7-0 last season, you look at the fact that he knows how to basically pull away from his defender to find that yard of space, to anticipate where the ball's going. That is Premier League experience, and as we discussed in our Football Terrorist show, Jesus, while he's obviously a fine player, he's still adjusting to the way that people defend in the Premier League, and he's finding that he's hitting brick walls quite a lot because Premier League defenders are all over you like a rash. Whereas Woody, I think, would have maybe found a way to kind of create that extra yard of space.
Yeah, because like I said, the chances are there, aren't they? Just nobody putting them in at the moment. I know we've scored against Malmo and 3 against Liverpool kind of thing, but if you're looking at this game in isolation of the chances what we did create today, you would expect like Chris Wood would have scored at least one of them chances today.
Yeah, and as if to prove the point, when with just over 15 minutes to go, Yates and Calamuendo came on in place of Sangare and Jesus, and I'm assuming those subs are at least partly thinking about the fact that it's a 3-game week after having a European midweek last week.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could. Just to prove the point about Chris Wood, Calamuendo, as I anticipated, barely got a touch because he's a fox in the box. I think in those instances, he proved against Malmo that actually he's got finishing ability if he has that yard of space. But again, he's got the same problem as Jesus. He couldn't get the ball in a position where he could do anything with it. He barely touched it, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, exactly. So, but
just as a footnote, so there's another substitution to report, which was a late one, which was James McAtee coming on. Morgan Gibbs-White had a bit of a collision with a Brighton player, and again, I think it's one of those where he's looking a little bit just like Jorginho Ruta in the first half. I think he's looking a little bit dazed, but it wasn't a concussion sub or anything. It was let's take him off. And McAtee came on, and he probably did more in 5 minutes than he had done in the previous however many minutes he's played in a Forest shirt. Maybe because we're chasing the game, I'm not quite sure. Including a really, really delicious through ball that almost, but not quite led to an opportunity.
Yeah, again, another one of those where it's just a half an inch off or whatever, and we just didn't get that opportunity. So, I think James McAtee just needs to try and get as much minutes into his legs, because obviously player in there, but obviously for whatever reason we haven't given him that opportunity. I know he started on Thursday against Malmo kind of thing, but he just needs more minutes and obviously get you.
Well, it's fitness, it's sharpness, it's also adjusting to a completely different set of almost footballing rules for him, isn't it? Because the thing that I noticed against Malmo, which is probably a hangover from the fact that he was a Man City player under Pep, is that he always wanted to slow it down. And in order to be effective at the level of football he's at now with Forest, actually the key is knowing when to speed it up. And in fairness, that's what Brighton did when they tried to break on us in the second half today, is that they were basically Nunoing us, weren't they? They were holding firm, waiting for the opportunity. And unfortunately, when they did score their second goal, it was an absolute Horlicks by Morato, wasn't it? He didn't have a happy day today. And yeah, he tried to shepherd it back to Sells, that failed. And then when he had the opportunity to clear it, it's one of those where you just, a bit like Guillermo Vicario in the Spurs match yesterday, sometimes you just got to put your boot through it, get it anywhere except on the pitch. And he just tried to backheel it to his hapless custodian. And it meant the easiest of finishes for Tzimos to put the game out of reach.
Yeah, I mean, it all stemmed from a free kick on the far side from Elliot Anderson, and he was just a bit rushed. The ref gave the free kick, and the Brighton player wasn't retreating. Then he put the ball back down and just like whipped it in when nobody was really looking or set. Then they obviously come down the field. Morato does what the attackers were doing, i.e., the ball back to Sells was about an inch short or whatever. Then they scored, and like he says, initially it was a disaster, but Sells has done all right. Then he's again what Morato was doing, only he knows. And at that point, it was a mass exodus from the City ground because you knew the game was up then. But
yeah, actually, you know what? You reminded me of a couple of things. So, firstly, you mentioned Sells there, and Sells actually inadvertently got an assist to an assist. Well, I say inadvertently. There's a moment where he had to intercept another short back pass, brought the ball out, and then played an absolutely outstanding ball to Hutchinson. First touch was amazing, took him down the byline, and it forced a good save from Jesus. So I should have mentioned that before we mentioned that Jesus went off. And there's always a moment, isn't there, where you think, was that the chance? And I think that's probably the one. When that one didn't go in, you kind of go, no, we're not scoring today.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other thing I want to mention, and this is, it's very, very easy to be overly critical on a day when you lose, and, it's kind of the bubble gets burst ever so slightly. But Morato reminded me today of a Premier League Tobias Figueiredo in that actually he's big, he's strong. Most of the time he's a complete warrior. You won't want to mess with him. But then when he gets it wrong, it goes catastrophic, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's very erratic. Like you say, there was a spell last season when he come on, and we didn't concede for about 2 or 3 months. And then did he start a game against someone, and obviously it was a bit of a disaster.
Is that Villa match, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, but
yeah, and yeah, I think what this proves is that if we're thinking about it in Premier League terms, okay, what was he, a £15 million defender? Well, he's playing next to Milenkovic, who's a total warrior. I know that in terms of his transfer fee, Milenkovic cost less. I know that Murillo costs less, but he's playing next to probably a £30 million defender in Milenkovic and an £80 million defender in Murillo. So it's not anything, and not any fault of Morato. He just looks like what he is, which is at Premier League level, a £15 million defender is okay.
But but another annoying thing what he did today was he was trying to do Murillo type things, like trying to play the ball, and he tried. There was a couple of times where he tried to ping the ball over to the left side position and got intercepted time and time again. And it's just like, obviously you can't do it. You're not Murillo. Just play it like square pass, then we'll just get up the pitch that way.
And that was the frustration, wasn't it? Because all you want really is, and what we've seen so far from Dyche is that you want your team to play to their strengths.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously we had the 40-day disaster with Ange, where you're getting players to do things what they're not familiar with, and you got Dyche, and then Morato was just doing daft things like that. And there's no end of times where he could have played it to Milenkovic to Savone and get up the pitch that way. But just half-assed balls where you're just trying to ping it over the top and not intercepting it. It just I know there was a lot of frustrating things happening in the game, i.e. not getting that final ball right. But when you're in a position like that, stop needlessly, because we know how good Brighton are keeping the ball, stop needlessly giving it away. And but like I says, it's one of those games today where obviously we weren't good enough. We were second best. And we'll move on to Wednesday against Wolves.
Okay, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute.
The 8th
1865 Match Report.
Rinse takes your laundry and hand-delivers it to your door, expertly cleaned and folded, so you could take the time once spent folding and sorting and waiting to finally pursue a whole new version of you. Like Tea Time You. Or this Tea Time You. Or even this Tea Time You.
Said you hear about Dave?
Or even Tea Time You.
So update on Dave.
It's up to you. We'll take the laundry. Rinse. It's time to be great.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Now it's time for a view from the opposition, and I'm joined by Brighton fan Ian Peppiatt. Now, Ian, no doubt you are delighted with a strong away win for Brighton, and I'm just going to ask you first of all did you expect it to be a 2-0, and how did the match compare with how you thought it would turn out?
Thanks for having me. I think it was a little bit unexpected. I think a number of us were fearing a similar result to last year. But it does feel that we're a little bit more consistent. So it's one of those kind of periods where we're playing all right. It's not too bad. We're playing some nice periods. So on our day, I do think we can beat anybody. But also on our day, we can lose to anybody, and we can go periods without scoring or, spurning chances. So 2-0 wasn't entirely unexpected, but also I think I was anticipating a draw today.
The first half was very much a game of two halves in itself, with Brighton absolutely dominating until about 22 and a half minutes. And for the second part of the first period, Forest came back more into it. But of course, the goal did come on the stroke of half time. How important was that to the Brighton game plan?
I think as a fan, it would have felt very different had we not taken a lead into half time, given all the opportunities we had in the first half. But that said, I do think that Fabian Hürzeler is very good at looking at the game, at the score as it is at any particular point, and assessing what needs to be done. He isn't always successful in making changes that do change the outcome of the game, but I do think he's very good at often making the right choices to make a mark on the game. So going in at 1-0 gave him many different options, I think, and I was quite happy to see the changes at different points in the second half.
It's fair to say that with the substitutions at half-time, Forest were really trying to get back into the game, and they definitely put you under some pressure. Now, I would say that at about 65 minutes, I was thinking, we're going to get back into this. Forest are looking positive. Obviously, Hutchinson's causing some problems, and we were getting into your box a bit more. So I guess my main question is, were you confident of weathering the storm?
In a word, no. I wasn't confident. I think Hutchinson was putting us under a lot of pressure, as you say, and we don't keep a lot of clean sheets. Although we're doing a lot better recently, I have to say. The defence do look a little bit more solid. But I didn't have confidence that you weren't going to concede, that we weren't going to concede. So the gift of the second goal was very much appreciated from my side.
Finally, congratulations on your victory. How do you see both sides doing for the rest of this season?
I think it's going to be an interesting season, and still a long way to go. We seem to have found a bit of form and a bit of an efficient way of playing and creating opportunities, which has been a little bit frustratingly lacking in recent months. But it's really nice to see Fabian Hürzeler, his fluid style coming through with the players. As to you guys, I'm not really a fan of Sean Dyche, although it's an effective start to his reign. But yeah, you're not going to stay in the relegation zone. I'm confident of that. And have fun in Europe. It's I miss it this season again, and it's horrible to see Palace there and us not. But I'm glad you're in the Europa, not them.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Thank you very much to Ian for the view from the opposition. And Tom, before we go any further, let's just hear what the gaffer Sean Dyche had to say after the game.
I can't fault the players for their reaction second half. I thought there were so many good signs. The crowd were great, trying to get them going and keep them going. And it's a really, it's an error of a goal, and that kind of takes the wind out your sails. But I certainly can't question the second half. I thought they were excellent. I thought Mari affected it again. Callum affected it. Elliot Anderson was terrific, I thought. So weirdly, in amongst the scoreline, which we're all disappointed with, it's certainly me, but there's a lot of good signs about the players and what they're delivering. And certainly second half, I can't question that.
So, Tom, any thoughts? Would you agree with what the gaffer had to say there?
To be honest with Sean, he's so honest. I like to have a manager who, if we played well, we played well, and if we haven't, we haven't. And you get back to the car and you're thinking, he's watched the same game as me. There's nothing worse than coming out the ground. Obviously, you're disappointed that you've lost the game, and managers try and pull the wool over your eyes. So what Sean is saying is absolutely bang on. There was positives in the game, but obviously it wasn't enough to probably get anything out of the game. So I do love Sean Dyche's honesty, and won't talk too much about the previous manager. But
I was going to say we've had that with 3 out of the 4 recent managers. So we can say that about Stevie Cuyper and about Nuno and about Sean Dyche, and there's someone else who was around apparently at some point. Let's just also have a think about, I was again having a conversation with Mrs. Ferrara about this week, and I was saying, in an ideal world we'd be getting 7 points out of 9. Well, that's not possible anymore, is it? But Wolves is a must-win, and Everton they're being very Everton-y, aren't they? They're a bit of an enigma.
Yeah, but first with Wolves, they've been awful. I mean, we've been obviously the victims of this in previous Premier League seasons, like in the 90s. Sell your best players, don't replace them. It's a recipe for disaster. And obviously they've sacked the previous manager. Rob Edwards has gone in, and there's not much positivity. I haven't watched the last 2 games, but they've lost the games at the end of the day where they both so badly need points. So we've got to go to Wolves on Wednesdays, and from our point of view, it's got to be a must-win game.
And as you mentioned, I think surely it makes sense, even though it's an away match, to put out a slightly more front-footed lineup, maybe with the wingers who came on in the second half today, maybe on from the start. What would you think?
Yeah, I think with how fragile Wolves are at the moment, like I says, I'm not trying to contradict myself because I haven't seen much of Wolves this season. You've got to start on the front foot. If you get that first goal, that's going to be it for them, because obviously it's going to be toxic at Molineux, and obviously it's going to be one of those things where it's happened in near enough every single game where obviously they haven't won a game. So Forest have got to start on the front foot, and like you say, I think we've got to start with Mari Hutchinson. And for all the argument that he's made such an impact as a super sub, do you want to kind of upset his chi in that respect? But he's shown that he can make things happen in a way that probably no other player in the team can. So I mean, it's the ideal opportunity to bed him in, isn't it? Yeah, definitely, and also he's like in the games he can't do any more, can he? I mean, back to the game against Leeds, won a penalty, set Morgan up for hit one of his goals. Come on against Liverpool, obviously had a massive say in the third goal. Couldn't play on Thursday. Probably unlucky that he didn't start today. So, and with the 3-game week, we've got to use the squad. So I'll definitely start him on Wednesday.
Yeah, and so with that in mind as well, I say Everton, bit of an enigma. I would guess we'll need to see how Wednesday goes in terms of not only the performance, the results, but also the injury situation, won't we?
Regarding Everton, I watched them last Monday against Man U, and obviously with Idrissa Gana Gueye stupidly getting himself sent off with that altercation with Michael Keane. I thought Everton did really, really well against Man United and won the game. Then I watched them again yesterday, and they weren't very good.
Nah.
I mean, So it's kind of, you don't know what Everton you're going to get at the moment. And even up front, I mean, they're scoring from like different areas of the pitch with Dewsbury Hall, etc. But they don't know who their main striker is in terms. Is it better? Is it Thierry Barry?
Tieno Barry, yeah. Who's got the least French-sounding surname in the world.
Yeah. So it's one of those. So I think with Sean Dyche going back, I mean, first and foremost, he wants the 3 points for Forest, but it would be nice for him to go back to Everton and get 3 points for him.
Yeah. I mean, difficult to disagree with that. And actually, you're talking about Everton playing against Man United. I think it's also worth pointing out that in reality, Brighton today are the toughest team that Forest have played since Bournemouth, who we always lose to anyway. They're definitely the best team we've played because Man United, not very good. Liverpool on a downer. Malmo, not even in the same ballpark. You know, these games at Leeds, obviously, they're on a downer, and there's every chance they're going to end up getting relegated. So today was a team who've got a really, really good record this season, who are feeling confident in the ascendant. And so hopefully there's a lot to learn from taking on a team like that.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing, like with the results this weekend, gone our way. So even though it's not great to lose today, it wasn't an absolute disaster. So it's basically as you were kind of thing.
We weren't going to go up in the league, but at least we've not sunk back down. Yeah,
obviously closed that gap up a bit, kind of thing. But Brighton been on a really good run of form. I thought I know they've been pretty good at home, but away from home they've been not as good. But they had our number today.
Yeah, they certainly did. So I'm going to say thank you very much to you, Tom, and thank you very much to Ian for providing the view from the away end. Stephen will be back in midweek with Yates's Espresso Bar, and we'll obviously have a report after the away matches against Wolves and Everton. Until then, thanks for listening, and come on, you Reds.
You've been listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and leave us a review. It helps other listeners find our content.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.